Corvallis, Oregon, a quiet little town nestled among pine forests where people rarely even bothered to lock their doors at night. But on a May morning in 2004, that peace was shattered. A young woman stepped out of her apartment, carrying a bucket and a few cleaning rags. She was cleaning light fixtures at the apartment complex her sister managed. Everything seemed completely normal. But just minutes later, she vanished without a trace. No screams, no witnesses. Only her flip-flops left behind on the cold concrete. Her family immediately called the police. A massive search, unlike anything Corvallis had ever seen, was launched. They combed through every bush, every stream, but nothing. 1 year passed, then 2, then 5. Hope began to fade, until, in another state, another abduction took place. And that case unlocked the door to the man who had murdered the young woman and buried the truth for half a decade. Her name was Brooke Wilberger. At 19 years old, Brooke lived in Oregon and was the 5th child in a tight-knit, loving family. She was a top student and a gifted athlete who loved basketball, skiing, and running. At just 16, she began dating Justin, one of her closest childhood friends. Their shared faith in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was a deep bond that held them together. Brooke later enrolled at Brigham Young University in Utah, while Justin departed on a 2-year mission trip for their church. What most people didn't know was that Brooke hadn't been able to speak until she was 4 years old. That early struggle inspired her to study speech pathology, with the hope of helping others overcome similar challenges. She had a soft, gentle voice, but when she saw something wrong, she never stayed silent. Brooke grew up in a small town and always dreamed of exploring the world beyond it. She was excited to start college, a brand new chapter, full of possibilities. Her first year went by smoothly. Like many college students, she returned home for the summer, hoping to earn a little extra money before the next semester. Thanks to her older sister, Stephanie, Brooke landed a summer job at the Oak Park Apartments in Corvallis, just about 30 meters from their home. Stephanie and her husband lived and managed the complex, making it the perfect gig for Brooke. She would often stay a few days at a time, working shifts and spending time with friends. That day was Monday, May 24th, 2004, a warm summer morning in Corvallis. Stephanie and Brooke had already made plans to grab lunch together. Around 10 a.m., Stephanie glanced out the window. Brooke was filling a bucket with water, getting ready to wipe down the light fixtures in the hallway. By midday, while fixing lunch for her kids, Stephanie suddenly checked the clock. Brooke had left around 10, but hadn't come back. A sinking feeling began to creep in. Something wasn't right. Holding her kids, Stephanie joked, "We might need to send out a search party." At first, she assumed Brooke was just chatting with a neighbor. But when she stepped outside to check, she found a scene that froze her blood. Brooke's bucket was still there, quietly resting by the light. And next to it, her flip-flops, mud-streaked, the straps torn, as if someone had struggled there. In that moment, Stephanie knew something terrible had happened. It seemed that someone had forcibly dragged Brooke away as she tried to fight back. Stephanie immediately called her husband. They continued searching, hoping Brooke was just nearby. But by around 3 p.m., they discovered something chilling. Brooke's phone, wallet, and handbag were all still inside her locked car. In that moment, they knew something was terribly wrong. Stephanie called 911. Police arrived quickly and shared Stephanie's growing concern from the very beginning. Lieutenant Ron Noble later explained, "In most cases, when an adult goes missing, authorities often wait to see if they return the next day. But this case was anything but normal. Brooke wasn't the kind of person who would disappear without telling anyone. She was organized, had a set schedule, and was always on time. A few residents of the complex reported hearing a scream around 10:30 a.m., but no one had seen anything specific. News of her disappearance spread quickly. Investigators immediately began canvassing every apartment, knocking on doors to speak with residents. Meanwhile, other teams searched the surrounding areas, looking for any suspicious individuals who might have been nearby at the time.
This is a real, nice community, and, bad stuff, it just never happens out here. It just doesn't.
But people...
They said coastal region, Benton County, and Benton County only goes so far.
Leading many locals here to think this deserted road was the location Joel Courtney took Brooke Wilberger the day he killed her.
It was a massive undertaking. Police had to consider over 2,000 people who could potentially be involved. Naturally, they also wanted to talk to Justin, Brooke's boyfriend. But at that time, he was in Venezuela, serving a 2-year mission trip. Everyone who knew Justin confirmed he hadn't been in the U.S. when Brooke disappeared. Justin had seriously considered proposing, as the two had been together for years, and Brooke had always dreamed of having a big family. When he heard she had gone missing, he was devastated. He couldn't believe it was real. After confirming his whereabouts, police cleared him as a suspect. However, the fear didn't go away. Captain Jonathan Sassman recalled the atmosphere during those days. There was tension hanging over the entire town. As the search continued, anxiety spread throughout the community. Was someone dangerous still out there? Would he strike again? Brooke Wilberger's case quickly became one of the most followed and talked about investigations in Oregon's history. Thousands of people joined the search. And soon, the FBI got involved. Reports started pouring in from across Oregon and even farther, with people claiming they had seen a girl who looked like Brooke. But every lead turned into a dead end. A few days after the investigation began, police received a strange tip. A 30-year-old man named Soo-Koo Kim, who lived nearly 80 miles from Corvallis, had caught their attention. Kim was a reclusive man, living with his parents, and had previously been arrested for stealing women's underwear from a college dormitory. A swift search of his home was conducted. Police uncovered thousands of women's underwear hidden throughout the house, along with tens of thousands of explicit images and videos on Kim's computer. Many of these files depicted scenes of rape, torture, and even mutilation. One particularly disturbing document titled OSU.doc was discovered. Created after Brooke disappeared, it appeared to be a detailed how-to guide for committing sexual assaults, so detailed, in fact, that it included suggestions on what to wear and what items to carry to avoid detection. What police uncovered was deeply disturbing, but after analyzing Kim's computer history, phone records, and store receipts, they confirmed that he had been at home with his father and shopping at a supermarket at the exact time Brooke disappeared. Though once their prime suspect, Kim was ultimately ruled out of the investigation. In the end, Soo-Koo Kim was sentenced to 7 years in prison for multiple charges, including theft. However, he was not connected to Brooke's disappearance. After his arrest, Kim's parents sued the police, claiming the pre-dawn raid on their home was excessive and emotionally damaging. The case was settled out of court for over $300,000. Meanwhile, time kept slipping by. One day, a week, then a month, but there was still no sign of Brooke, the 19-year-old girl who had vanished in broad daylight. Statistically, the chance of survival after the first 72 hours drops with every passing hour, and hope within the family began to give way to despair. Then came a promising lead. A dark green vehicle, possibly a 1997 model, had been spotted multiple times in the area around the time of Brooke's disappearance. Police zeroed in on a tip from a man named Brian, who had called 911 to report the vehicle driving erratically and acting suspiciously. Several witnesses also confirmed hearing the sound of a truck near Oregon State University on the same day. Bob, a university employee, clearly remembered seeing the car with Minnesota license plates parked in a lot near campus. The driver, a strange man, was talking to a female student. The girl had been so frightened that she reported the incident to school authorities. Not long after, another student came forward with a similar story. A car pulled up beside her, and the driver asked where she was going. Then suddenly, he stepped out and opened the back door of the vehicle. Sensing danger, she turned and ran, never looking back. While these accounts caught the attention of investigators, the man's identity remained a mystery. More importantly, was he connected to Brooke's disappearance? That question still had no answer. 6 months passed. 6 long months with no leads. Brooke remained missing without a trace. Then came November. Over 900 miles south in Albuquerque, New Mexico, police received an emergency call. What they heard sent chills down their spines. A woman named Doreen had been driving with her children when she saw a young girl frantically running across the street, trying to get into a nearby restaurant. Doreen stopped her car immediately and rushed to help. The girl, a 22-year-old Russian exchange student, was still crying as she told her story. She'd been walking when a man grabbed her from behind, held a knife to her throat, and forced her into his car. He tied her hands with her own shoelaces and drove to an apartment complex, leaving her locked in the vehicle while he went inside one of the units. But luck was on her side. In that fleeting moment, she escaped. The woman, named Doreen, immediately called 911, her voice panicked but clear. She gave a detailed description of the attacker and his distinctive vehicle, a red 2-door car with matching decals and a small animal ornament dangling from the window. Thanks to her statement, police quickly identified the suspect, Joel Patrick Courtney. He lived with his wife and 3 children in a quiet Albuquerque neighborhood, just a few blocks from where the attack took place. When officers stopped him, Joel was sitting in his car with a crack pipe in hand and a knife hidden beneath the seat. But the bigger shock came from his criminal record. Since 1991, Joel had multiple charges related to sexual assault, along with a string of other offenses. At 38 years old, his life had been a chaotic trail of odd jobs and frequent moves across states Alaska, Florida, New Mexico, Oregon. More recently, his wife Rosie had filed for an emergency protection order, accusing Joel of choking her during an argument. Dina, Joel's older sister, also shared terrifying memories from their childhood. She said Joel used to be a smart kid with a lot of potential, but everything fell apart way too soon. By age 11, he was already using drugs and spiraling deep into addiction. In his teenage years, Joel joined a Satan-worshipping cult and dropped out of high school. His criminal behavior escalated quickly, landing him in juvenile detention for the first time at 18, charged with sexual assault. Dina recalled one of the darkest nights, Joel sneaking into her room while she was sleeping, wrapping his hands around her throat, trying to attack her. Still, when Joel met Rosie and started a family, Dina believed things had finally settled down. She chose to forgive him, tried to rebuild the relationship with her brother, but that peace didn't last. Joel spiraled again back into drugs, hard liquor, and violence. Everything once more spun out of control. At the time of his arrest, Joel was completely wasted, drowning in alcohol and crack cocaine. He drank almost daily and had already been arrested multiple times for driving under the influence. After the brutal attack on the 22-year-old Russian exchange student, Joel Courtney was immediately arrested and charged. But as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something that sent chills down their spines. One detective working the Brooke Wilberger disappearance case began to notice disturbing similarities. Both victims were young women with light-colored hair, petite in build, and both were abducted in broad daylight in almost the exact same manner. Curious, a member of Brooke's investigative team pulled Joel's travel records. And then came the gut punch. On the exact day Brooke vanished, Joel had been in Corvallis, Oregon, with his wife and children. When Rosie, Joel's wife, called Dina, his sister, to say Joel had just been arrested, Dina froze. She turned to her husband and asked, "Do you think ... he was really involved?" Even before she knew the name of the missing girl, before she realized the victim was a 19-year-old college student, Dina's gut screamed at her. "Oh God, ... did he really do it?" She couldn't prove it, but something deep inside told her the truth. Joel knew something about Brooke. Even though Brooke's body had not yet been found, police believed she was no longer alive. And Joel Courtney, a man who had drifted across the country, leaving a trail of violence behind, was now the prime suspect. While Joel Courtney sat behind bars, investigators didn't waste a single second. They spent months quietly building a case, one piece at a time. Then came an unexpected breakthrough. Police discovered the dark green minivan Joel had been driving around the time Brooke disappeared. Several witnesses from that day recalled seeing a similar
Leading many
van
locals here
racing
to
through
think
the
this
area
deserted
near the
road was the
university,
location Joel
right
Courtney
when
took
Brooke
Brooke
vanished.
Wilberger the day.
The van was taken to the lab. Forensics combed through every inch, the dashboard, the floor, the seats, even the luggage compartment. And then, in the spring of 2005, the results came in. Brooke's DNA was found inside the van. But that wasn't all. Strands of her blonde hair were also discovered tucked inside a headband hidden in Joel's bag. The DNA evidence confirmed what many were still too afraid to believe. Brooke Wilberger had been inside that van. And if she had been there, then Joel Courtney may have been the last person to see her alive. On December 19, 2006, after more than 2 years of investigation, Joel Patrick Courtney was officially indicted on 19 charges, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, and sexual assault. According to his defense attorney, when Joel read the indictment in jail, he and a few inmates laughed, as if the entire thing was a joke. During a visit, Joel's mother looked him in the eyes and asked a single question. "Did you kill Brooke?" He paused, then calmly replied, "I don't know who she is. Stop asking me." And before the visit ended, Joel left her with one chilling sentence. "They'll never be able to hold me accountable for this." In January 2007, Joel Courtney declared that he was mentally unfit to stand trial. But after undergoing a psychological evaluation, the court ruled that Joel Courtney was fully competent to stand trial. Cameron, Brooke's mother, later recalled, "She was driving when she heard that Joel was trying to use mental illness as a way out. She let out a sharp breath. Her hands shaking, then laughed through tears. I remember thinking, if he gets away with this, I'll fall into a black hole I can't escape." Still, before facing trial for Brooke's case, Joel was already serving an 18-year sentence in New Mexico after pleading guilty to kidnapping and assaulting a Russian exchange student. The wheels of justice were slow, but they were turning. The only question was, would they turn fast enough to drag a killer into the light before it was too late? Throughout the pretrial hearings, Joel Patrick Courtney showed nothing but arrogance and contempt. He sneered at the judge, remained cold during testimony, and played psychological games with everyone in the courtroom. But that arrogance only fueled the fire. Instead of being shaken, investigators doubled down. They swore they'd find Brooke, even if they had to tear all of Oregon apart. And in the end, the biggest breakthrough came from Joel himself. After nearly 5 years of silence, he confessed to what everyone feared. He knew exactly where Brooke Wilberger's body was buried. At that time, his murder trial was scheduled for early 2010, and prosecutors were ready to pursue the death penalty. But then, a deal was offered. The truth in exchange for his life. For months, Joel stayed silent, as stone unmoved by the family's grief, unfazed by Cameron's tears. He played a cruel game of control, holding the location of Brooke's body like a bargaining chip. It wasn't until he was brutally assaulted by fellow inmates and lost access to his anxiety medication that Joel finally broke. Desperate to be transferred to a different facility, he made an offer. Joel agreed to reveal where Brooke was buried, but only if the terms were met. He would serve the remainder of his sentence closer to family in New Mexico before being returned to Oregon. Most importantly, he demanded that the death penalty be taken off the table. The deal was accepted. Joel Patrick Courtney changed his plea, and after 5 agonizing years, the Wilberger family finally got the answer they had been praying for. With a police convoy behind him, Joel led investigators to a desolate dirt road about 12 miles west of the abduction site. There, beneath a fallen tree, buried deep in the dry soil of private land, they found the remains of Brooke Wilberger, the exact place where Joel had taken her life in cold blood. Official confirmation came from dental records, but for Cammie Wilberger, Brooke's mother, the most heartbreaking proof was the silver watch still on her daughter's wrist, the same gift she had wrapped and placed under the Christmas tree. She remembered that moment like a scar that would never fully heal. Despite their unspeakable pain, the Wilberger family walked into court with grace and quiet strength. They thanked the prosecutors, detectives, and everyone who never gave up hope. Cammie said, "We're grateful that justice has been served, and that he'll never be eligible for parole. Now we can move forward with our lives." In court, Joel finally stopped denying everything. With chilling detachment, he admitted that on that morning, he had driven around town with one purpose: to abduct a young woman. Brooke just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He even confessed to trying to kidnap 2 other female students earlier that same day, but both had escaped. Those revelations brought additional charges, finally closing the file on a predator and bringing a long 5-year nightmare to its end. He didn't plan to kill her at first, but the moment Joel Courtney saw Brooke Wilberger working alone, his plan changed instantly. He approached her, pretending to be a delivery driver, and lured her closer to his van. As Brooke stepped near, he pulled out a knife, overpowered her, and dragged her inside. There, she was bound tightly with duct tape and brutally assaulted. Joel then drove the young woman deep into a remote forest. He left her there overnight, still tied up, alone. The next morning, he returned and ended her life coldly with a blunt object. In his confession, Joel claimed he didn't initially intend to kill her, but said Brooke's fierce resistance changed his mind. He even expressed surprise at her strength and determination for such a petite girl. Joel admitted he was the one who hid her body under a fallen tree in a remote stretch of private land, a place no one would have found without him. No apology, no remorse. Throughout the investigation and trial, Joel Courtney never showed even a flicker of regret to the Wilberger family. Joel Courtney was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice was served, but the shadow of his crime still lingers. Cold, haunting, and unforgettable. After the trial, Dina, Joel's sister, broke her silence. She didn't make excuses for her brother, nor did she place blame. "We love Joel," she said, "but our faith requires us to follow the truth. We must answer to God first." Dina still remembers the prayer her family offered on November 30th, 2004. "Dear Father, if Joel is guilty, please make him tell the truth. And please help us find Brooke." When Brooke's remains were discovered, that prayer had finally been answered. The grief was overwhelming, but the Courtney family knew the Wilbergers had finally received the answer they'd been waiting for after 5 agonizing years. Though no official confirmation has been released, the FBI strongly believes that Joel Courtney may be a serial killer, linked to at least 3 other sexual assaults and murders across Oregon. A female attorney who once dealt with Joel described him as one of the most terrifying individuals she had ever encountered. She compared the paralyzing fear of being near him to the feeling she experienced when standing close to Richard Ramirez, the infamous serial killer who once haunted California. In a blink, Brooke went from a young woman prepping lunch with her sister, wiping down light fixtures, to being dragged into a nightmare no one could possibly imagine. "I don't think I'll ever come to terms with what happened to her," Stephanie, Brooke's sister, said through tears. "I could live to be 80, but time will never make this okay." She admitted that she avoids thinking about that horrific morning in 2004. Questions like, "What could I have done differently?" only lead to a vicious cycle of guilt and exhaustion. Cammie, Brooke's mother, knows that kind of pain all too well. Our grief ... goes far beyond what most people can imagine. She describes living after the tragedy as standing on an iceberg. What people see on the outside is just the tip. What we carry inside is so much colder, so much heavier. Brooke Wilberger didn't deserve to die like that. But though her light was extinguished far too soon, her memory and her family's tireless pursuit of justice will never be forgotten. If you believe justice matters, and stories like Brooke's deserve to be heard, please share this video and leave a comment below. There are still so many cases left unsolved, and maybe, just maybe, you could be the one to help bring truth to light. If you're still here, thank you for staying until the very end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we've got many more cases ahead, and you won't want to miss a single one.